Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Markers and Monsters. As always, I'm Colin, your humble host, and I don't know about you guys, but here in good old Mars, PA, it's been hot, rainy, and humid all summer. Makes a man feel like he's in a Louisiana bayou. What a great opportunity then to draw Swamp Thing, one of the coolest, biggest, and greenest comic heroes ever. As you can see, I'm just starting with a simple portrait of just a really tough-looking Swamp Thing coming at you. Pretty easy peasy, nothing too complicated with this, but a good little portrait and a way to just, get a good look at the character. So lots of fun there. As always, I'm starting in by putting in a rough pencil of the character, and then we'll move into the markering and the inking process last. Pretty standard stuff. Now, if you don't know anything about Swamp Thing, let me educate you. Swamp Thing first appeared way back in 1971 in an issue of House of Secrets, put out by DC Comics. House of Secrets 92 to be exact. House of Secrets was kind of a horror anthology comic. Pretty cool stuff. I love these kind of things where, you get 4 or 5 little short horror type stories in a single issue. Stuff that, creepy and eerie, and a lot of other comics were doing. Tales from the Crypt famously as well, but that was back in the 50s. This kind of stuff, man, I just got to go on a quick tangent and say I love horror and sci-fi anthology stuff. I wish they'd do more of those, especially in the comics industry, where it seems like everything's just all long form superhero comics, which are great, but DC, Marvel, if you guys are listening, short horror stories, bring them back. Anywho, after this first initial appearance, which was kind of a one-off story that doesn't connect to any of the other Swamp Thing mythos or anything like that, not really, Swamp Thing got his own book. Swamp Thing was created by writer Len Wein and artist Bernie Wrightson, and you guys should know I'm a huge Bernie Wrightson fan. Love the guy, love his stuff, very influential. Came up with a great look, and they set the character of Swamp Thing in, contemporary times, so that was 1972. This series ran until 76, and during that time, Swamp Thing, who was originally a man named Alec Holland, a scientist working with all kind of planty stuff. Unfortunately, an experiment went awry and, doused with chemicals and stuff like that, turned into the Swamp Thing, this plant matter man you see coming together before your eyes. He would fight crime, mainly in the swamps, a lot of mutants. Anton Arcane, a corrupt businessman / scientist, was kind of his arch nemesis. He had a series of Unmen, which is a great title. These mutated guys who would come after Swamp Thing. Arcane also had a niece, Abby Arcane, who was Swamp Thing's love interest. So real cool stuff. I dug it a lot. It wasn't until 1982 they decided to revive the Swamp Thing comics. At that time, the Wes Craven movie came out. Now, if you've never seen the Wes Craven Swamp Thing movie, it's kind of a bizarre take. It's nothing like any other Wes Craven movie you'll ever see, like Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever. Very goofy and weird, and you could tell Wes didn't really hit his stride in filmmaking for a little bit, but still a lot of fun. I gotta say, it does have Adrian Barbeau in it, so hey, that's great. Ray Wise, everybody's favorite crazy dad, Leyland Palmer, also plays Alec Holland, and stuntman Dick Durkock plays Swamp Thing in the suit, which is one of the worst monster suits I've ever seen. My gosh, what were they thinking? Anywho, after this 1982 revival, sales didn't go so hot, so in 1984 they brought in Alan Moore, the bearded one himself. Alan came up with a kind of an interesting take on Swamp Thing and retconned the character's identity. Now, here's some spoilers if you guys haven't read this, but considering it's from, over 30 years now, you're just going to have to deal with it. So it turns out that Swamp Thing was never actually scientist Alec Holland. Swamp Thing is actually created by nature itself, and it is a construct that absorbed Alec Holland's memories and personality and stuff before Holland died. So there's no turning back into a human, which was one of Swamp Thing's goals, to regain his humanity. He was never human to begin with. He was created by a force of nature called the Parliament of Trees, which is also known as the Green, which I guess is like the connected spirits of all plant life on Earth. So it's basically like nature said, hey, we need like a defender to defend us, so let's make this big green galoot. And hey, this guy just happened to die in the swamp. Let's give this green guy his memories. And so that's what happened. Kind of weird stuff, but really good, really compelling issues by Alan Moore. Definitely worth a read. I would definitely say if you can get your hands on that series. I know they've the books themselves are expensive, but you can get trade paperbacks, hardbacks. You can get them on Comixology pretty cheap. So that starts in Saga of the Swamp Thing number 21 from February 1984. Now this mythology is pretty much endured throughout DC's run of the Swamp Thing character, with little odds and ends here and there that happen that are a little bit, change things up. But generally, he is a protector of nature created by nature itself. So pretty cool stuff. And like I said, get your hands on it and definitely read it. Now, in 1989, the movie The Return of Swamp Thing comes out. Now, this is a sequel to that 1982 movie, the Wes Craven movie. Return of Swamp Thing is directed by Jim Wynorski, B-movie legend, the guy who made Chopping Mall, Deathstalker 2, and 976 Evil Part 2, to name just a few of them. This movie was great, guys. I gotta say, if you're gonna watch, either of the movies, they're both good, but this one is so entertaining because it's so campy. Jim Wynorski knew that this whole idea of this big green dude running around the swamp beating people up, falling in love with human women, this time played by Heather Locklear, so you got that going for you, was a goofy concept and just had fun with it. I mean, he fights mutant dudes, Anton Arcane is back and he hams it up. It's wonderful. Also has Sarah Douglas in it, one of my B-movie Scream Queen crush types. She played Ursa in Superman 2. She was in Conan the Destroyer. She was in Beastmaster 2 Through the Portal of Time. Wonderful stuff, you guys. So definitely check out the Return of Swamp Thing film. After that, Swamp Thing was in a TV show in USA in the 90s, which ran from 1990 to 93. One of my faves, too. That's what I know Swamp Thing from. That and The Toys, which are absolutely incredible. When the TV show came out, it was pretty cool. Also has Dick Durkock in it. They filmed some in a Florida swamp, which is pretty neat. Like that. They made an animated show that was, I think, on Fox in 1991. This only lasted 5 episodes. Now, I remember watching it back in the day, only a little bit. I have vague recollections. I know I've seen all 5 episodes when I was a kid, when it was on TV. But more than anything, and this is the thing that really got me into Swamp Thing to begin with, were the toys they made for that 5-episode cartoon show. The toys were incredible. And as a monster lover, as a kid, man, these were wonderful. So they had a whole bunch of different versions of Swamp Thing, and each one had its own gimmick and weapons. There was like a glow-in-the-dark, like bio-glowing Swamp Thing, who had like a mace for some reason. There was one that you dunked him in water, and he changed colors. He could go from like green to brown to camouflage himself. Pretty sweet. There was one with a log bazooka. A log bazooka. Yes. I don't know how Swamp Thing made that, but hey, that's science for you. There was one that could shoot his own hand off like a missile, and then the missile was connected to his arm with a green cord, and you could like winch it in, like he could grab some dude. And then the bad guys, they had the Unmen, right? And they were dudes, and they had guns and stuff, and then you could put these horrifying like bug monster mashup masks on them and turn them into weird mutant creatures. Now, my brothers and I, we also had the Transducer playset, which was like a weird lab and a table, and it could transform humans into bug monsters. Who wouldn't love that? And finally, the piece de resistance, Swamp Thing had like a sweet rocket-powered tank thing. It had missile launchers and guns on it, and he could cruise around in the swamps with that. Now, where's that in the comics today? That's what I want to know. DC, if you're listening to me, Swamp Thing needs a rocket-powered tank. All right, guys, enough ranting and raving from me. Let's take a look here at the scan, see how this guy turned out. Pretty cool. As usual, I had a ton of fun working on this. I love getting out my green markers. It's one of my favorite colors. I got a ton of green markers, and just putting in all that weird little planty details, leaves, and junk like that with the pen and ink was a total blast. Highly recommend it. Now, if you guys out there are interested in learning about Swamp Thing, I would definitely say start off by reading the comic. If you can get those Alan Moore ones, Saga the Swamp Thing number 21 and on, super duper cool. If you can get some copies of the original ones by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson back from 71, great. And definitely check out the movies, especially the Return of Swamp Thing movie. Highly entertaining. And also, Shout Factory has put out DVDs of the USA TV show, so that's pretty sweet too. And if you could track down the toys, don't hesitate. Well, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for letting me rant on about Swamp Thing while I try to keep cool here during the summer of sweltering heat. We'll catch you on the next one. Hope you all have a good day, and stay frosty. Goodbye.
The Unmen are back for revenge, and they want Swamp Thing!
Weed Killer's poisoning Swamp Thing's home!
Who can save it?
Swamp Thing! Nobody poisons the swamp trap. I live here. It's feeding time for my Venus flytrap. Ah! It won't stop me.
Is this the end of Swamp Thing?
No! My mighty Bog Rover will put an end to you. Fire!
Swamp Thing, Guardian of the Earth! Swamp Trap playset, Bog Rover and figures sold separately.